What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Star Wars Explained. Just a couple of days ago, the new novel Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade came out. I had the pleasure of speaking with author Delilah Dawson a couple weeks ago before the novel was released, and we talked all things non spoiler, kind of leading up to the book. But now that the book's been out, we want to talk some spoilers. So please welcome back to the show, Delilah Dawson.
Hello again.
And how embarrassing, we're wearing the exact same thing.
Oh, I know.
Can't
I didn't
believe
even
we
do
did that.
laundry.
Yeah, I have this one shirt. It genuinely is my favorite shirt. It's very comfortable. People make fun of me for wearing it all the time, but oh well.
There's nothing wrong with having a uniform.
I agree. It is embarrassing to look through my own social media, though, and just see how much I wear the exact same thing. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Star Wars and Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade. It's out now. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm telling
Well,
myself in the future.
yeah, you're doing great. But I did really like the book. It did a lot of things that surprised me that I was not expecting. And I want to talk about it now that we can more freely. So let's dive into the dark side because it is tempting for a reason. And it's really fun to read about. It seems like it's really fun to write about. How do you balance deep exploration of the dark side without straight up glorifying it?
I mean, I probably glorified a little bit. It's fun though, in all of my previous Star Wars books, outside of, a couple of anthology stories, I haven't gotten to write about the Force or the dark side or even use the word lightsaber outside of my short story with Asajj Ventress in
Mhm.
Stories of Jedi and Sith. So it was very exciting to suddenly be like, I went from 0 lightsaber per book to like 600 lightsaber per page, pretty much. Um, and I guess the fun part about writing the dark side is we all know that it's cloying. So it's like, as a Star Wars fan and a reader, like when you see it pop up pretty early on in the book, you're like, oh no, it's already here. But it's fun to watch a character tell themselves like, oh, that's not me. I wouldn't do that. Like I'm not letting that in while they're kind of letting it in. I'm also, I guess I've always been a person who's kind of not afraid of having a dark side personally, and not shying away from it, but kind of exploring it, especially through prose. But it's fun to write a character, and we kind of it's almost like a romance. We're like, will they, won't they? We know they're
Mhm.
going to, even though they tell themselves they're not going to. But in this case, it's the dark side. So it's
That's
it's it's seductive for a reason.
Yeah, I like the way that you point out, we all do have a dark side. There's a straight up arc in the Clone Wars that is about Yoda saying that to deny your darkness is to just give it more power. I think that you did a great job of making the dark side very fun and very alluring to a scat, while at the same time acknowledging that, it doesn't get her what she wants. She comes to the same conclusion at the end where it's like, I thought the dark side would bring me the freedom I longed for, but it's still a cage. Which I loved the the play kind of on the Sith code of like, through power my chains are broken, and she's like, I still feel caged. And I was like, that's so good.
Yeah,
And
it's kind of rough to have a character who wants freedom so badly and doesn't recognize that like the old boss, the new boss is still the old boss is still the new boss. Like if you have a boss, you still have a boss.
yeah, and you got to answer some big, fun lore questions as well. Stuff that I've been curious about. People have been asking for a long time. But at least in Iskat's, and I would say to Alon's point of view, how did Inquisitors survive Order 66? So was that something that had a lot of discussion, or was that something that you kind of knew how that would happen? What was the process for answering that question?
Well, nobody writes a Star Wars book until they've written a pretty extensive outline, and you swiftly learn as a Star Wars writer that the more detailed your outline is, the less problems you have later. Um, because if you bring up anything in a draft that wasn't in the outline that doesn't work for story group, you can lose big chunks of story that can be very important to it. So The more detailed the outline, the better. So we knew that this would be happening, and we wanted to show a way to survive Order 66 that nobody had seen yet. We thought that that would be a really fun moment. Um, so, we had to, I guess, come up with that way, but by thinking about, if you were the person doing Order 66 and you wanted to, be able to kill as many people as possible and have some live, that you have to put up, you have to set that up yourself. Like there had to be, it wasn't random. Everything here was very purposeful. But, I think there's one point where she's like, oh my God, they've just been sending us all out to get us as far away from each other as possible. Like we totally fell for it. Because she sent off like, oh yeah, Grievous is out there somewhere. Go get Grievous. And later on, she's like, in what world did I think I was just gonna go kill Grievous? Like I'm just some kid. And yet, they get all pumped up to be like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. So it was really fun to play on her, naivety and hopes and her ego and just, I guess at the end she's grateful to be alive, but the rest of us are kind of like, oh, you kind of got played, my dude.
Yeah, I loved that kind of comment or realization that she has, that it's not just Order 66 that came in and they killed 10,000 Jedi. This book makes it very clear how devastating the Clone Wars were. I loved the off-screen death of Tualan's master, where you're just like, oh, well, he's dead now, and we're sad about that, but that's how the Clone Wars goes. So the idea that they were just getting sent on mission after mission that was meant to, like, every mission, it's like, well, another Jedi died, and that's just another one that Order 66 doesn't have to worry about. It
Well,
was
and so
kind of
many
like,
of them felt so meaningless when you think about the
mhm.
things that these people got sent out to die on. It was just so random. Like it wasn't like, oh, he died battling Count Dooku to save the life of a child. They're like, no, that dude was just sent off to some random place and got shot in the street.
One of my
It's
favorite lines of the book is, "You sent us to the planets with the loudest senators and not the loudest screams." That was a great line. So,
yeah.
just
I
well done.
forget almost all, like I write these books and edit them, and then I kind of forget them. I'm like, ooh, that is good. Like, hey, I did that. Cool. All
High
right.
five yourself, yeah. Well, so yeah, you have 4 books coming out in the next couple months, so it's I imagine they're all kinda coming together, but that felt so in line with other stories that have come out in the past year, like Dooku's Tales of the Jedi animated series was very much about the senators getting what they want and ignoring the needs of their people. I also loved, how connected it felt with Brotherhood, and, like, we got to see that scene of the rushed knighting.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was super fun because we needed to have her knighted, and I was like, "Okay, I gotta write the ceremony." And then Tom was like, "Well, wait, they wouldn't just be doing this like one a month, but they have to do this." And he was like, "I think she has to get it the same one as Anakin." And I was like, "Oh, does she?"
that
Which is
that was
awesome because
very
like
cool.
Mike Chin's one of my buddies, and I love that he's writing for Star Wars now. So it was really fun to be like, "Mike, I'm in your scene, making stuff up." I also didn't have to write the really difficult Mace Windu speeches, which was nice of him to do that for me.
Yeah, just take all that over. And I love when Star Wars kind of makes these accidental double features in a way where you can read Brotherhood and it's a much more focused story about the Clone Wars and the perils of it, but you're really focused on Obi-Wan and Anakin and these characters with plot armor. And like I said in our last talk, that I've really enjoyed how this book, it was no one had plot armor. Yes, we knew Ascat and Tualan were gonna make it to the end, but everyone else was just getting picked off. And I felt like we got a very full view of the Clone Wars in those 2 books.
Yeah, it was
So
also fun just because I don't know, it was fun to know that when Mike Chen wrote that scene, it was through Anakin's point of view, and his point of view is so different from everyone else's. It was nice to have, a different person's point of view, and then also, it's like I knew Obi-Wan was there, so I got to like steal a little Obi-Wan scene. So it's definitely like sneaking into someone's room and like borrowing their toys for a few minutes.
what was it like to explore her relationship with her various masters that never quite saw her, and she got that little scene with Obi-Wan where she was like, he's always been kind and seems like a good master to Anakin, which, like, from an outsider's perspective, like, we know that that's not fully true, that's a flawed relationship. But from her perspective, it's something that she longed for.
Yeah, when we were crafting her as a character, because everything is done kind of hand in hand with my editor Tom Holler, who is the absolute best, with the support of Lucasfilm and Elizabeth Schaefer and all of these wonderful people that are part of this team. Um, we knew that her relationship with her master needed to be unsatisfying to kind of kick off her dissatisfaction among the Jedi, because this is, I guess in a lot of my books, I've explored PTSD from the vantage point of, we don't always talk about in Star Wars, all of these people are living through a war and they're veterans and they're going to have PTSD, and in fact, a tank can't fix that. Which, I have PTSD, so this is the thing that's important to me. But in this book, it was the sense of, she always felt very different. And, when you're raised among the Jedi, it's not like you ever had this motherly parental relationship. And like, children need love and connection to thrive. And they need, to have that connection to one or two people or a couple of people that they know that they can always count on. And as far as we understand it, Jedi don't necessarily have that. They're raised in the creche, and, they're encouraged not to have too deep a relationship with certain people. And you just get to, if you're a kid who feels different and who doesn't make any connections with people, like, she never felt connected to anybody growing up, and then she almost flunks out of the Jedi trials, and she has this master that she feels zero connection with, and that's her whole life. And that's going to mess a person up, and we don't always talk about that. So when she sees Obi-Wan and Anakin, she doesn't see all of their baggage and their disagreements. She sees, like, when they see each other, they smile and they laugh, and they're friendly, and she's never experienced that in her entire life.
Yeah.
I get like mad on her behalf. I'm like, somebody had to hold that baby.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, you make her very sympathetic, and it was something I in my review quoted the Bad Batch, where Tech tells Crosshair, like, I understand you. I don't agree with what you're doing, but I at least understand you. And that's how it felt. And seeing the way that, like, an institution and dogma can get in the way of, yeah, what a human or a Picorian actually needs to grow up and thrive. I really dug that.
Well, she was also written with a little bit of a. I've learned in the last couple years that I'm not neurotypical. That I've at least got ADHD if I'm not somewhere on the spectrum, and I've always felt like an alien walking around. Like, everybody else understands the rules, and I just never got that memo. So I kind of wrote her through a very similar lens of, she feels like everybody else gets this. Like, they get serenity, they connect with the Force, they can do what they're asked, they seem happy, and like, I don't understand any of this. So hopefully that kind of builds into with why she never feels truly at home with the Jedi, and why she might be looking elsewhere for connection.
Hmm. And you brought up the Padawans who maybe don't pass the Jedi trials, or even the initiates who don't make it onto Padawans, and how horribly that can negatively affect them. How do you think the Jedi could, or maybe this is impossible, but is there a way you think the Jedi could change or alter that rejection to be better?
I mean, it's, you build up a kid in this world, you basically tell them, you are special and you will have this life. And then you say, oh, except if you don't pass this arbitrary test we've given you, you don't get any of that. It just seems very cruel. But, at least we know that afterwards they try to find them a place in the Jedi Service Corps. They try to help them find a place to fit in. Like, they do. I think in a lot of cases, the Jedi try, but what they are doing is best for the Jedi, not necessarily what's best for
Mm.
the individual child, which I think we see a lot in any kind of, governmental learning institution, where it kind of becomes more of a factory necessarily than a nursery.
But I think that's perfectly in line with a lot of Star Wars stories about when institutions and organizations get in the way of, like, you forget that they're made up of people. It's something that I really liked comparing this era of the Jedi back to the High Republic, where I feel like Iskat would have had maybe a better chance to be a different kind of Jedi. I
Yeah.
love that we have characters like Ram Jomaram, who is like a Jedi mechanic, and you don't see that as much in the prequel era. How do you think she would have done any better in the High Republic?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's we know that she finds her special skill, like, she finds the thing that she's great at, and I think in an era with a more personal approach, she would have been matched with the master who was like a master swordsman who, brought her up to be a master swordsman and said, "Look, you have this specific skill. You probably need to go into being a temple guard, or you need to, do something that's going to uh, really use your skill and help you flourish," as compared to like, well, I have no choice but to take you on. You're going to do what I do, even if you don't like it, even if you're not good at it.
Mhm.
Like that's that old, you got to play baseball because your dad wanted to be great at baseball. Like if you don't love baseball, you're always going to suck at it. So they kind of just set her up for failure.
Yeah, that to the point where she only has given a chance to use her skills to kill.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of gives her tunnel vision, where it's like, this is the only thing I'm good at is killing. It also reminds me of like the Bad Batch, where I think that's part of Crosshair's struggle, is that my whole thing is being a really good shot, and so I don't know how to live in society if I'm not a soldier. And I think that if she were given a master who were more understanding, she just could have been a great like competitive fencer or something.
Yeah, there's also, I mean, you could have gone to a planet, that needed to have its vines cut down. Like there are other things you can do. You could have a sushi chef. Like there's choices.
Yeah, but the way that things were orchestrated for Iscat, it felt like she didn't,
Yeah.
which is yeah, just very very tragic. Uh, but also really really fun when you get to the all the Inquisitor stuff. Um, how was it starting to explore her relationship with like the seventh sister, the fifth brother, and kind of some of these Inquisitors we've known about for a while?
Yeah, that's one of those cases where, like, I wanted to use everybody and I could really only go deeper with the people that I was told that I could go deeper with. So if you're reading this and you're like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you talk to that? Like, because they wouldn't let me. I did everything that they let me do. Like, I think I was told like you were allowed to mention fourth sister. So I was like, oh, here we go.
Mm.
I mentioned her, like, but that was it. So yeah, it was nice to get to play with seventh sister. I was very excited. I was like, I want to establish, like, Star Wars writers always want to, answer some great question in canon that people are really going to be hype about. So when I was like, oh, I'm gonna tell you why she gets to have those, why seventh sister has the droids.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So like that was very exciting. Where it felt like it feels like you're annexing a little piece of land. Like you're like, here's, I put a flag here. I got to do this.
Oh yeah,
That
that
was very fun.
all those little things are super fun. And the one for me that I was like the whole time I was just like, but what's her name? What's her number? I don't know why I got so invested with that. So thank you for finally getting to that. But you really dragged it out to the point where I was like getting anxiety about it.
That wasn't my choice. I would have loved to have told you every single thing about how one becomes an inquisitor and gets a number and what the numbers mean. And I told you everything I was allowed to tell you.
Well, I figured it was a dramatic choice that worked, where we got to hear it eventually, but you just made it to the point where I was like, I have to know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this wasn't your choice either, but I was like, to Alon, still don't know his number, but that's okay.
It was in a past draft, and then they went in a different direction. So
It's okay.
I know, I know what it was, but you guys don't get to know.
I did love seeing his survival. That was just another way that someone can survive Order 66 and become an Inquisitor, where he just is so angry and wants revenge. And so Sidious is like, well, hold on now.
We
We
can
might be
use
able to
this.
work with
We can
this.
use this.
I
Yeah, that was
really,
really fun to try to drop like some little gumdrops earlier on to be like, oh, maybe he's not the perfect Jedi.
yeah, that was one that surprised me as well. Just at the start, knowing like, okay, these two characters are both going to be Inquisitors, but I thought it was great to have one of them being the model Jedi, so that we got these two completely separate stories of a fall, and the idea that he just was too angry to die, like so many Inquisitors are.
Yeah.
It works. So we recently, earlier this year, got Star Wars Jedi Survivor and the tie-in book Battle Scars by Sam Maggs. I talked to her earlier this year, and the fifth brother is a big part of that book.
Yep.
And she said that she discussed at some point with Lucasfilm having a scat be in that story just for some extra synergy. It would not have worked out timeline wise,
Yeah.
but I'm curious if there were any of those discussions at all between authors.
I mean, I wish, because I love Sam and I'm always happy to chat with Sam. I was given some chunks of Battlescar, not the whole. I didn't get the whole book, but like they sent me over some chunks of the PDF while she was writing it, so that I could see her more in-depth coverage of Fifth Brother and get some more, you know, little tidbits that would factor into his dialogue, just to make sure that he carried as a character across both books. And I didn't write him, using like lots of big flowery words, and then she wrote him during like staccato little chunks. Like, so we tried to keep the dialogue and the character aligned between them. But yeah, I got some of her chunks and she didn't get any of mine, so I just got to use her fifth brother to craft my fifth brother.
Cool. Well, uh, I really hope that we get to see more of the Inquisitors. I maybe we would jump back farther in Escat's timeline or something, but I just remember I said it earlier, but we were at Dragon Con last year, and you said that you had something coming up, and you wouldn't tell us what it was, which you're not allowed to. I knew that when I asked, but still, I'm just telling Lucasfilm that you were very good and you didn't give away any secrets. But I thought this was a perfect book for you to write, and obviously, I hope you continue to get to write some more violent women in Star Wars.
Thank
So
you. Me too.
that'll wrap up our spoiler talk for Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade, which came out a couple days ago. It's available right now. But please tell everyone again where they can find you online and what other works you have coming out that a Star Wars fan might be into.
Sure. So I am Delilah S. Dawson across all the social media that I'm on. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Blue Sky the most often. I have a Facebook author page, but I don't go there because the UI is garbage. My website is Delilah S. Dawson. If you actually want to like talk to me, if you have questions, Twitter is the best way to interact with me. I will talk to you about just about anything in good faith that I can help you with there. I like to help newer writers when I can, and people that want to know more about publishing, but I won't tell you Star Wars secrets. And then this year, I've got a Disney Mirrorverse tie-in novel that goes with the mobile game. So I've got, Snow White with a giant axe is hanging out with Hades and Sully and Stitch and Tiana and Rapunzel. So that is probably the most violent Disney I've ever gotten to write. I have a YA romance that has almost nothing to do with Star Wars that is out in November if you like sweet romance and Shakespeare. And then I have a horror book out in October called Bloom. Oh, sorry. The YA romance is called Midnight at the Houdini, and it looks like this with the key over here. And then in October, I have Bloom, which is a Hannibal-esque girl serial killer novella. It's out in October.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to talk to us twice. We really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. Hope y'all enjoy it. Thank you.